Issue 76. The story opens up many days after the destruction of Restoration HQ. That's unnecessary. Sonic goes to visit the Chaotix, which is confusing because he doesn't explain why. It's so stupid that the Chaotix get freaked out at seeing him and interrogate him under a lamp for participating in a race he wasn't allowed to. Even though the rest of Sonic's friends all immediately assumed that he must have done so because the one responsible for that race was evil. They knew that the one responsible for that race was evil. This reminds me of Sonic X, where they were made a complete fool out of. This is the same kind of energy where it seems like the writing hates and misunderstands them. Aspio phrases things as Sonic being in cahoots with Eggman, which nobody told him. Why would anyone tell him? And Sonic recaps boringly. Charmy tells him that because the Chaotix are detectives, he should have come to them. Sonic tries to justify after the fact that they were already on the case and needed to be saved anyways, so he couldn't have come to them. Why does Vector care that Sonic interrupted the races? Why does Charmy care? I didn't think Vector was lawful stupid. He knew he was working for Eggman and Heroes, and he still happily went through with saving him. I don't think he cares about the rules being broken. Aspio said that evil must die in the results screen of Heroes, which indicates how Sega thinks his character actually is. But killing isn't legal, so Aspio isn't supposed to be lawful stupid either. And Charmy was raised by them, so you'd think he'd have the same values. Why is he talking as if it's Sonic's fault that Restoration HQ ended up destroyed, when Clutch only tried to destroy it because Charmy had his evil deeds exposed after Tails freed him from a cage? And it was Jules' idea. Wouldn't he know that something bad would have happened if Clutch hadn't been stopped? Though I don't know what. I don't think he would have done anything he wasn't already doing. What was even his plan? Why is he mad at him for stopping Clutch from getting away? Sonic somehow doesn't stand up for himself by saying what I did, as if the writer somehow agrees with him. Did he even read issue 75? Sonic came here for Vector's help in finding Clutch. He saw Eggman's robot carry Clutch away, so it'd be common sense to assume Eggman has him. Oh, I guess he means he thinks he can turn to Vector to find any base of Eggman's that he doesn't know the location of. It would suck if that was established in the games, because then the heroes would officially have no excuse for not doing something about Eggman. The logic would have to be, it takes too long for them to search every base. Wouldn't Sonic know the location of all the bases? I guess his logic is, the Chaotix know the locations that he doesn't, even though that's not in their job description. Aspio calls Sonic out on working with a manipulator, and at least Sonic gets to call out Vector's hypocrisy, as Vector at least knew he was working for Eggman and Heroes. So he should be saying this to Vector instead. Saying it to Aspio to try to make him feel bad is mean. But Aspio treated him terribly first, so it's not quite like last time. As for why Sonic knows that, Vector must have told him while bragging about his adventure. He took too long to do it though. Sonic flatters them as the best detectives he knows, and Vector likes that Sonic is eyewitness testimony to everything that went down. Why is he surprised, like he's just now figuring this out? Well, that scene was extremely awful. It shows Emeraldville ruins. I hate that they call it Emeraldville without explaining that it's in Emerald Hill. Silver's complaining that his vegetable garden's a ruined mess, but he admits that it'd make good compost for the next one. And Blaze says she admires that he focuses on improvement. He thanks her in this blatant waste of time scene when it comes to plot progression. Aside from the blatant Silver and Blaze ship tease pandering, it's got no value and bores me. He's called ambitious for wanting to make an orchard. Blaze tells Amy she's glad she's not hurt, and Amy shows pity for Silver over his garden. Why did it take many days for her to say this? It turns out Blaze got shown the Northern Lights by Silver, and Blaze finally addresses that while she and Silver were having fun, Tails was in peril, so she's ashamed of that. Out of nowhere, she says she must look out for her people, and is just using that metaphorically because they're friends. She says she'll be their bodyguard, and Amy hugs her, calling her sweet, and she thanks her uncomfortably. Amy apologizes and says she forgot she's not a hugger. But if Blaze was Sonic, she wouldn't have the morality to say this. So whatever. She's only saying that because she doesn't have a crush on her. Oh, and it turns out this isn't even how Blaze is in the games. Because in their Olympics victory animation, Blaze doesn't look uncomfortable when Amy hugs her from behind. And she doesn't even care when Cream hugs her in Advance 2. So that's a downgrade. But I don't blame him for assuming Blaze would be too serious to be a hugger and only made an exception for a little girl because she's a little girl. Because she's a lot like Shadow. And this is clearly an alternate universe. And she's also a lot like Knuckles, who is also not a hugger. I didn't know this at first because I refused to play the Olympic Games. I'm not interested in motion controls. And Tails says he was trying to check on the other regional offices. He wants to see if the network of volunteer organization supply requests and missing people reports had collapsed because it was all networked through Restoration HQ before. All of it. And as you can see, that was a bad idea. Logically, it wouldn't have collapsed because other people would have taken it on. And I didn't think Restoration HQ had a monopoly on this stuff anyways, because it's a ridiculous idea. And missing people reports would have never stopped being the job of the people it's the job of in real life. And Vector was handling missing person reports after the Metal Virus arc. So Tails is full shit. I guess it makes sense because he didn't talk to Vector. Silver arbitrarily decides not to go with Amy and instead to try to comfort the Diamond Cutters that he never officially joined. Even though they would only feel worse after seeing him because Lanolin would be confronted with how wrong she was. So good. It cuts to Tangle sitting on a playground swing of all things in the woods because being childish was seen as the only way she could be made to stand out. I remember when she first showed up and she was cool. Part of why she was cool was that she was being helpful to the game characters, so she demonstrated that even a regular person could become on the same level as them if she chose to. And it seems like Double think that Flynn made Amy mature, but didn't make Tangle mature, so is he against that or not? Someone must have been hired to put that swing in the woods just for Tangle, because if this was a real playground, there wouldn't just be one swing here. Surprisingly, no one says anything when Silver shows up. So why hasn't Restoration HQ been rebuilt yet? Lanolin doesn't tell him he was right all along and give him a cookie she was saving just for him. Because she's a piece of shit. Who has too much pride to apologize even though she deserves to have no pride now. Silver says nothing's going to change or get fixed like this, so someone needs to say something. And somehow he asks Jewel what the plan is, even though he should have already assumed that the plan would have been to rebuild as soon as it was destroyed. And in fact, she literally did order rebuilding to start right away, in issue 75. Even if there wasn't enough money right on hand to rebuild it. Surely some billionaire would have funded it. Jewel quits and says managing a small museum is much easier than something like the Restoration, and she was even smart enough to know that from the start, but just wanted a challenge. She says it was too much and she was not the right person for the job. I doubt she'd be ready to actually step down. Aren't people working for the Restoration gonna start scoffing and rolling their eyes at yet another leader of it quitting? They've had so many leaders in such a short time frame. Jewel explains that the reason she wanted to work for Clutch was because he said it could ease the workload and make things easier. She says she thought it was a good idea to steer the falling airship to the Restoration, and she says it was a horrible choice because everything's in ruins. She never points out that she should have just steered into the ocean. No, that would have made sense. Instead, to anyone who hasn't figured that out, it looks like she's selfish because she regrets taking the decision that saved the lives of tons of people in the city. What were they thinking? It's good that Tangle used her tail for something again, and what she uses it for is getting Jewel close to her to comfort her. Although it's weird that she has her in her lap. That would be uncomfortable. Tangle flatters her, saying that she always liked helping people, and says she always told her to learn from her mistakes. So how is she supposed to learn from this if she and everyone around her are too stupid to figure out that you should have just sent it far into the ocean? Instead, this comforts her. Jewel thanks her and calls her bestie in this obvious sentimentality pandering to try to emotionally manipulate me. Leyland blathers on long-windedly that she's looked at things from every angle and starts apologizing again. Either Flynn didn't know she apologized already, which I only say because of how much he's contradicted as she's 75, or even Flynn knew she had a shitty YouTuber apology. It's still the type of apology whose words try to tell the audience to like her though. It's only concerned with justifying her actions. She admits she was blinded to Mimic, but of freaking course she doesn't apologize for slamming Whisper into the ground. Doesn't even look at her the whole time she's saying this. It's no wonder that again Whisper refuses to look at her. She went from a YouTuber apology to a corporation apology. She says she's in no position to be judging anyone's merit, so she apologizes to all of them. Now she better never be written to do that ever again, and I don't trust the other writer not to, when she's the one who turned her into a tyrant in the first place. Silver thanks her emotionlessly, and Leyland says that she has to fix this. And while she doesn't think she should be the one to restart the restoration, even though Jewel quit, so she's the only choice we have, she wants to make Emeraldville great again. A safe, clean place for people to live. Where's the pollution? She at least asks if that's reasonable. Thankfully, Tangle's written to Lampshade that it still seems large scale. But this is just admitting that she hasn't changed permanently. She says she doesn't have any experience in town management, after briefly I guess lying because she says no after saying she somehow picked up pointers in the restoration. Jewel says they could work together and make Emeraldville great again. Are any of the people in Emeraldville going to get a vote? No? Well, anyone would assume there's still a mayor running this place, and she's just talking about giving it some extra help, like starting a charity organization. Leyland thanks Jewel as the writer makes her sniffle, which only comes off as desperately saying, please like this character. See, she's not a terrible person because she's sad. No one bad has ever been sad before. It's just so on the nose. You don't have to be over the top. Whisper has me proud of her when she says she wants to end Mimic. But I know it's just wasting my time trying to get my hopes up because it's too obvious from anyone who knows this comic well enough that's never gonna actually let her get to kill Mimic. Even though there's no reason the writers couldn't just make another shapeshifter character if that's their issue. Because every current fan of this comic will just like the new character because they like everything the comic does. Flynn killed off tons of characters in Archie Sonic and he still has a legion of fans. I hope that the silent panel of Whisper is supposed to mean that Whisper is actually lying when she says she won't kill Mimic. I hope that her quotation marks around the word stop also mean that she was lying. Although, if the writers don't plan to finally kill him off, but they also plan to have them go right up to him, would it just be Flynn writing himself into a corner later, or making an impossible situation for Evan? Because there's no possible way Mimic would survive both Whisper and Silver wanting to kill him if they find him. The second Silver would be close enough to him, he'd grab him with telekinesis. Anyways, Belle recapped boringly and says that the world doesn't seem so big and scary anymore, even though she should know people always still get scared when seeing her. She says she'll do traveling to help people she meets along the way, which is what Sonic should be doing, while owning a cell phone of course, so his friends could call him back home when Eggman starts attacking his town for the day. Belle wants to take some time for herself away from cataclysmic scenarios. I doubt she's considered a popular enough character to be given her own subplots. All she is nice girl when she's not whining about her past, but she acts like she's done with it. It's nice that she says she loves them all and is smart enough to lampshade that they're disaster magnets, although it's clearly the villains who deserve the blame instead. And I'm surprised that she said that. Tangle says unhappily that this means the Diamond Cutters are disbanding in record time. That's pathetic. They only had one mission against Eggman. I'm also relieved because Sonic wasn't a part of them, or even Tails and Amy. That'd be better. So they're always trying to replace the Freedom Fighters but failing when they never even needed to have such a group then, because Sonic and Tails were always the Freedom Fighters of the games. The dictionary doesn't say that a group needs to have more than 2 people to count as a group, so Sonic and Tails alone are still Team Sonic, which is functionally the same thing as the Freedom Fighters. A group only falls apart if most of it disbands. Whisper gets apologized to, and she's happy anyways because this isn't goodbye. Leyland suddenly thanks them for letting her be a part of this when she doesn't deserve it. Another blatant, cynical, please like this character signal by the stubborn writers who refuse to learn. What happened to the Flynn who wrote Archie entirely in a way that pandered to its complainers when he first started? And Tango's all supportive of Sonic getting Surge to join the Diamond Cutters, but she doesn't speak a word about Surge and Kit not being a part of this. Jewel thanks Silver for helping them, and Silver uses telekinesis to get a group hug going since he's had character development after generations from getting friends that made him optimistic, realistically. In his first few games, he had no reason to want a group hug. He didn't even have enough friends for it. He was just in a bad mood in his first games because every day was a battle against a resurrecting monster and he was practically alone. In the first game, he was on a mission to try to kill somebody to save the world. He was friendless in Rivals, but there's no proof that's even canon. Why did Eggman Nega happily work for Eggman in Rush Adventure when the Rivals games state that he hated him his whole life and he tried to destroy the world in front of Eggman? If the main games contradict the game, it's because they're not canon, or would have been valued enough to not be contradicted. My point is, it's good writing that Silver's likable in the comics, and it's twisted that some people want him to be unlikable. Nobody liked him calling Tails a half-pint and stealing his rings. We already have Shadow to be a jerk. I can't see what's wrong with him being nice in the comics. He should still have a backbone though. Sonic says Clean Sweep is still operating, and nobody here knows who's running it. And somehow, nobody mentions just doing a single Google search to instantly find that out. And instead, Sonic says he's gonna chase a lead, and he runs in front of Vector's car. If Vector's planning to follow him, then that means Sonic is forced to go slower than usual. He could just do the searching separate from them so multiple places are being searched at once. Why didn't he just ask Vector where to go? Tails takes off in the plane with Amy behind him while Blaze stands on the wing, even though I'd expect someone cautious to be in Amy's position because that's safer. But no, instead she's perceived as female Sonic because of her abilities in the games alone. Bella's an even more intimidating Motobud pull a wagon at a snail's pace that came out of nowhere. And I'm just thinking someone would come along and try to smash Motobud. Why was it given a scary black paint job? And yet it's got a harmless looking flower on it. Seriously, I wish it was explained why she has this wagon. I guess Tails built it for her. Why rebuild Restoration HQ when you can do this instead? It'd be nicer to assume Belle saved up for it with a paycheck that the hippie didn't actually have to give her because she's a robot. I hate that it ends without telling me how Surgeon Kit found another place to live. I still don't know whether the annual story is far into the future, like he thinks the comic's gonna get cancelled. This issue by Ian Flynn established that Sonic's gonna slow himself down so that the Chaotix can follow him in a car as he tries to look clutch instead of having one hold on to him and the others hold on to each other and running. And the Diamond Cutters disband to search for Mimic and be useful making Emeraldville great again. Because apparently it wasn't before. Why was the whole issue nothing but talking? That's not a good Sonic issue. I'm sure I gave this a pass a couple of times in other comics, but this comic doesn't have good stories enough for me to give it a pass. It's not exactly amazing me with its premise. The story was a little boring because it was nothing but talking, but reading the Sonic novels have shown me a whole new level of boring. At least with comics, I have pictures to see in my peripheral vision the whole time I'm reading the dialogue, and there's almost no narration, so the pacing's better. But someone should have cut out the first scene to make room for something happening at the end. The meat of the issue was the Diamond Cutters being sentimental with each other, and Laylan trying to say sorry again. I don't care. The thing she decides to go off and do with Jewel doesn't sound like a Sonic story, so I doubt we'll see them in the process of doing that. The first scene pissed me off by making a mockery out of the Chaotix and misinterpreting them to be lawful stupid characters. Either that or people who would hate Sonic for the dumbest reasons because of his personality. It's like the writers just watched Sonic X to base their characters off of that. It was a small part of the issue that Sonic talked them out of without consequences, but it's a horrible and unacceptable first impression that put me in an especially bad mood for the rest of the issue, as I was immediately reminded that every character in IDW can lose all their brain cells at any time, that this isn't a comic that respects characters. This doesn't deserve to be called a good issue just because it wasn't as bad as the other bad ones. Oh yeah, when I think of Sonic, I think of characters sitting still talking about what they plan to do with their lives for the whole story. And Sergeant Kit didn't even appear in it.